Get in the action on the Action Addicts podcast. No greater faction than the action movie scene. Get in the action on the Action Addicts podcast. Your satisfaction, action on the silver screen. Get in the action on the Action Addicts podcast.
Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Action Addicts podcast. I'm your host, Scott Wiley, and today we are going to be talking about Invasion USA, the 1985 Chuck Norris Cannon Films release that is probably one of his more famous films, but it's not one that I particularly resonated with growing up, not in America. And I was always much more of a fan of his martial art films, which you're going to hear me talk about in a bit. Because today we are going to be joined by Robb Antequera, and I'll let him introduce himself in a bit, but I'm sure you are already familiar with him, because if you watch my show, there's a good chance you already watched the Action Drunkies, or as they've recently rebranded at time of recording, to the Cinema Drunkies. And if you don't, then you should, because their show is great too, so feel free to go and check them out, because they're awesome. Robb, like Mike, has been another huge supporter of this podcast, and I recently, well, I'll say recently, depending on when you hear this, I have been on their show as well, but at the time of recording, that episode is not yet out, so all I can say is watch this space. If you follow me on Twitter, then I will make sure to post it when it eventually comes out. You also might hear me and Robb talking on other shows coming to a future near you. Watch this space. So, Invasion USA, the tagline, or the the blurb, if you can call it that, is: a one-man army comes to the rescue of the United States when a spy attempts an invasion. That's a bit of a simplified look at what is going to happen in this film, but in all honesty, yeah, that's pretty accurate. I've got some things to say about the story of this film, and I think I might have to leave a couple bits for the outro because it's not going to really gel with what you're about to hear in our conversation. However, one thing that I do want to say is, as per always, I'm always curious to know how well this film did, and it didn't actually make as much money as I thought it did. So, if the information on IMDb is correct, it had a budget of $10 million, but it only managed to gross $17,536,000. Now, that's not bad by any stretch of the imagination, but I thought it considering how many people talk about this film as one of the biggest ones that Cannon ever made, I thought it might have been a bit more, but then I spotted something in the trivia section as I was looking for that, and two things made me laugh straight away. The first is that, just like Commando, the UK cinema version was cut by the BBFC. Nowhere near as bad as Commando, but it was basically for the same things. If you saw bullet impacts in sensitive areas, women snorting cocaine, and then when they did the home video release, they also edited out the part where a man's hand is impaled to a table with a knife, which I have absolutely no idea how that scene would have played out if you didn't have that bit, because, you know, him having his hand impaled to the table for a significant portion of the scene that follows is kind of crucial to the story of that little sequence where, you know, he's being interrogated and he can't move or fight back because he's impaled to the table with a knife in his hand. So yeah, God knows what that would have been like, but it was restored in 2004 when they brought this film out on DVD. The other piece of trivia is that until 2007, this film was MGM's second highest selling home video title, behind Gone with the Wind. Now, that's quite a trophy to have for a film that was made in the 1980s to still have that moniker until 2007. Unfortunately, I have no idea how much money that actually is, because unlike box office numbers, you know, trying to find home video numbers is an absolute nightmare, which is annoying because 9 times out of 10, that's where a lot of films find their audience, and that's where quite a lot of films also make a lot of money. And so many films that I'm a fan of can credit their eventual fan base, their money, and their ability to have a sequel to the fact that they did far better on home release than in cinemas. One that springs to mind that unfortunately didn't manage to use that to its advantage is 2012's Judge Dredd. Carl Urban and Adi Shankar's film was beloved by pretty much everybody that saw it. It is one of my personal favorites. Trust me, there's going to be an episode on it, probably quite the way down the line now, but that film didn't do very well when it came out in the cinema, mostly because it was up against things like, this tiny little film called The Avengers, and a bunch of other big films that came out at the time. It also, unfortunately, came out at the exact same time that The Raid decided to drop, and everybody was saying that, Judge Dredd and The Raid are basically similar story points, and all of that combined is the reason why we never got another Judge Dredd. But it's frustrating because when it was allowed to release on Blu-ray and DVD, it made a lot of money. We don't know how much money, but we know that it made a lot of money. So much so that they nearly made another one, and that they've been allegedly making a live-action series that's sort of, but not, based on that film. It's very messy. But my point is that home release numbers, in my opinion, should be included when you talk about how much money a film makes. The buck does not stop at cinemas. That is a very old-fashioned way of looking at things. The world has changed, and it goes hand in hand with my rant from last week about the death of cinema. Cinemas are not the only place that people choose to watch films. They haven't been since the 80s. Many people will have only seen a lot of classic films for the first time at home. Whether it was on VHS, whether it was on Laserdisc, whether it was on Betamaxes, DVDs, Blu-rays, any other weird and wonderful format that came in between since, before, after 4K. It's one of those things where if you weren't around in the 80s, if you weren't around in the 70s, 60s, the 90s now, you couldn't have seen it in the cinema, could you? So these films don't just lose their magic because you're not watching them in the cinema. And the fact that people are still buying some of these films, that they're still in demand for Arnold Schwarzenegger films, for Sylvester Stallone films, the fact that these people still have an appeal some 30, 40 years after their prime heyday of being these big, massive, multi-million blockbuster sellers, just goes to show you that we shouldn't just be thinking of, this film made X amount of money in the cinema, so it either was a massive success or it was a massive failure. Because as time goes on, cult classics massively change. So many films that failed when they were originally released are now considered classics, and you cannot imagine why people couldn't gel with a film. And it just infuriates me that because they didn't make money at the exact moment that they were required to, that they're classed forevermore as a bomb or a failure, and they'll get savaged by critics, because it's funny how often those two, especially back in the day, went hand in hand. Anyway, without me going on another rant, we're gonna throw it over to myself from a while back, and I was having a lovely conversation with Rob, and we're gonna go right there in just a moment. But before I do, I want to reiterate something, and that is that, oh my god, guys, thank you so much for choosing to listen to me. The response from the Spider-Man episode has been immense. The Commando episode has continued to find audiences. I had a fantastic conversation today at the time of recording with an absolutely gigantic podcast group, and they have been doing this for over 10 years, and they found me through a recommendation. And the fact that so many people seem to be picking up what I'm putting down, it makes me very happy. And I'm probably going to say this more, and eventually I'll stop because I know it's going to probably get frustrating, but I'm absolutely loving this, and I'm loving you guys. So feel free to reach out. Feel free to tag me on socials. Feel free to say hello. I don't bite. I've responded to everybody that's chosen to initiate communication with me. I see I've already got a couple of people on Twitter that literally tagged me to tell me they've never seen Invasion USA before, and they were gearing up for this episode to drop by finally, renting it or buying it and watching it. And that is more than I could have ever hoped for this podcast. If I'm literally allowing people to discover films that they've never heard of before, then that's my job done. never mind talking critically or not critically about films. I'm in heaven just knowing that I'm spreading the love of this genre that I have always loved from day one. So yeah, this is something pretty special, and I hope that you will continue to join me on this journey. Like I said, the episodes to come are going all over the place, man, and there's some pretty crazy films, and there's some pretty interesting stuff from me that hopefully you'll hear pretty soon. But until such time, guys, I'm going to throw it over to myself. So myself, take it away, enjoy the chat, and I'll see you in the outro. Alright, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the actual chat. I am joined by Robb Antequera, and would you kindly introduce yourself, sir, for the people that don't know who you are?
I am Robb Antequera, the Cinema Drunkie. Of course, you can hear me over at the Cinema Drunkies podcast with my brother Mac the All-Star, as well as the House of Screams podcast, hosted by my dear friend Candy the Final Girl, where we talk about horror movies of all kinds. And just so happy to be here on the show. I know this has been a big passion project for you, so I'm really excited to talk to you and talk about some action movies.
Yes. Passion project is code for it's taken a long ass time to get off the ground and a lot of effort and work and willpower. And I gotta say, folks, if you're not listening to the Cinema Drunkies podcast, then you should be, because that's one of the two that I always keep up to date with. So yeah, highly recommend these guys. If you're not listening to them, you need to fix that right now.
Absolutely. And of course, your episode on the Cinema Drunkies is coming out soon, so stay tuned for that, everybody.
Yes. Enjoy. All right, so today we are talking about Invasion USA. As I previously stated, a bunch of interesting facts about the film in my intro, I'm sure. And I thought that I had seen this film before, and as I watched it, I am still convinced I've seen it before, but I don't think I'd actually seen it since I was a kid. I thought it was one I'd seen, not too long ago when I did my brief Chuck Norris re-marathon when they started bringing out his films on Blu-ray, at least over here. But actually, I don't think that was one of them. I think I was getting it confused with a different one, where he plays a very similar character because, Chuck Norris films give him such breadth of characters to play.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
But I gotta say, I can definitely see me absolutely loving this film as a kid, and I can see me loving this film in the 90s. Watching it today, though, I had an existential crisis, I think, at one point during this film, where I was like, did the people making this, know what was going to happen? This film feels like one of those warning messages that you get in a time capsule that the crazy people made, and everyone just laughed at them. And then all this stuff I just kept noticing, and it was like, what? Did they use a time machine or something?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's definitely a different film now than it was even a couple of years ago. A couple of years ago, I used to watch this with reckless abandon because this is actually my favorite Chuck Norris movie. I love this movie so much. There used to be a channel on the channel's still there, but it's known as the CW11, and before that it was WB11. But before that it was WPIX channel 11, and they used to call themselves New York's movie station, and they would show all kinds of movies, movies that basically made me the film fan I am today. They would show The Wraith, Dolph Lundgren's Punisher. They would show The Gate, all kinds of stuff. And this was one of the ones that they showed. They showed this one a lot. So I saw this one a lot as a kid. They would show this one all the time. So God bless the program director of that channel, because there were certain movies they showed all the time, and this was one of them. So I was sitting there yeah. I was kind of to paint a perspective, I was kind of like an outsider in my house because nobody really was a Chuck Norris fan in my house. My father couldn't stand his movies. Neither did my mother. My father, every time Chuck Norris comes up, he thinks about the missing in action movies, and he hates those movies. He thinks they're so. He's like the fucking Braddock dodging bullets, and he's in the Matrix, Yeah, like, and so I was the only one that was like, no, I like Chuck Norris. You know what I'm saying? Chuck is cool. Like, I like his movies, and but this one is definitely my favorite Chuck movie, Invasion USA. I really, it seems to me that this is the one, like, when you think of Chuck Norris facts, like, this is the movie that comes to mind because it's like, you know, like all those feats they say Chuck Norris could do in those facts and shit, like were inspired by this movie, because like he's basically Superman in this.
Do you know, it's funny, actually. I hadn't actually thought about that. And it's curious because I'm going to say kind of something opposite to that in a minute. But yeah, I can see how some of the Chuck Norris facts could have definitely been helped by this film. I think there's a point for me with Chuck Norris films because it's funny because your dad dislikes him. Yeah, my dad is the reason I know of Chuck Norris. Because basically my granddad was the Eastern martial arts fan. He knew Jackie, Yun, Sammo, Bruce, Jet, but my dad was the opposite. He liked Sammo and Jackie. As I've said to you personally previously, he was never a big fan of Bruce, but that wasn't, it wasn't a case of he wasn't a fan of the person. He just wasn't a big fan of the films. And
Right.
that was more to do with the fact that he really, even to this day, it doesn't matter if it's Bruce or anybody, if you're making Kia noises, he's not really a fan because he thinks that's very unrealistic and only there for the sake of the film. Now, as a martial artist, I know that it varies drastically depending on what your style is, when you learned, and what you learned from, because I've heard, I don't know, I want to say a dozen different reasons, in air quotes, for why you should do a Kia, and none of them are remotely the same thing. So it really does kind of feel like they just started making up a reason at some point collectively. Right. But he loved Chuck Norris in the early days when Chuck Norris made martial art films or adventure films. And then, funnily enough, Missing in Action was kind of his point where he just left Chuck Norris behind. And in his opinion, and I can kind of see it, he turned from a 1970s martial arts star with real credentials as the world martial arts champion and became a 1980s gunslinger that kind of just left all of his martial arts stuff behind. And there are definitely some films where I think that, but I also think in this one in particular, even though I'm going to jump ahead of the film, he does have that moment where he suddenly remembers he can roundhouse kick for maybe 5 minutes. And that still worked for me. But in other films, yeah, he's just like, look at my muscles, look at the giant LMG that I'm wielding that realistically no human could singly wield. And yeah, that's when Chuck Norris and me do kind of diverge. But I found Invasion USA really interesting because I don't know. I'm trying to think how the best way is to structure this, but I just want to kind of get all my thoughts out before I even attempt it. But you were said about it inspiring the facts. I was actually shocked at how much I enjoyed it for its sense of realism in an over-the-top 80s way. I'm not saying the film's realistic, but I actually couldn't help but think that I found some parallels between this and John Wick. Because some of the kills, some of the close quarters gun work, and how fast he was killing per enemy with a proper burst fire from an Uzi instead of just firing it, all in one go and, only killing the pigeons flying above him. A part of me was like, this isn't actually very 80s. Yes, it does have its big 80s moments where like 16 people fire at a truck and somehow not a single one of them hits the truck. But when it's not trying to do the big spectacle shootouts, it's almost like somebody wanted to make a more realistic film, but because of the time period the film was made in, they couldn't do it. They had to go 80s at some point, and they had to go big. They had to go all out. I mean, the ending sequence with the National Guard is just ridiculous, but we'll get to that. But all of the bits with Chuck in the sort of, I want to say, second part of the first half and the last half, they suddenly feel like they were trying to go for a more realistic approach. And I found that really interesting because Chuck actually acts at certain points in this film, and he almost comes across as believable as somebody that might have been a CIA agent at one point. I'm not saying he should have won an Oscar or anything. I mean, when I say he acts, I mean like he actually shows facial expressions, which if you've seen all of Chuck's films, that is a good thing and not something that you expect by default. So, but yeah, I'm curious. What are your overall thoughts on Chuck's performance in this film and how they portrayed it?
I don't know. Chuck is Chuck in here. I mean, Chuck is Chuck in every movie he does. Even the movies where he you could say he's trying to make an effort. Like I think of like The Hitman, where he's trying to do something darker and more serious than what he usually did, and what he did previously in the 80s. When I think of Chuck acting, I always think of that moment in the Delta Force where spoilers for the Delta Force if anybody hasn't seen it. There's toward the end he loses one of his main buddy, and it shows Chuck crying, and he's just sitting there with that forever Stonewall Chuck face, but like you see the single teardrop come out, and like, yeah, that's Chuck's big emotional moment. He's got the single teardrop coming down as he just sits there like Chuck, But I did. You said something earlier, and I wanted to say I didn't want to interrupt you, so I waited till you finished. But where you said that you kind of moved on from Chuck in the 80s,
yeah,
where he basically became like a Rambo clone in a lot of his stuff, and I very much agree with that. I very much agree with that. I share that sentiment wholeheartedly. Because he was like, in America, he was like the last man standing when it came to martial arts. But then he moved on to, doing movies like, rubbing shoulders with Stallone and Schwarzenegger, where they were just big muscle bound guys shooting giant machine guns. Like, I remember, I forgot which podcast I said this. It might have been my buddy's podcast, Hit Rewind, where we were talking about that. We were talking about martial arts movies, and we were talking about when Chuck did that, like the martial arts genre kind of died, almost like, well, maybe not died, but like just really became irrelevant almost. You didn't see those kind of movies anymore. I mean, you had American Ninja, but you can't really call Michael Dudikoff a martial artist. But he did have Steve James to back him up doing his martial arts, and you had Sho Kosugi's movies. But those were very niche. It wasn't until Van Damme came out with Bloodsport, where like martial arts genre seemed to like come back in full force, and then everybody wants to do martial arts movies after that. So I definitely agree with that. Chuck kind of left us hanging right there when he decided he wanted to be Rambo and Commando and shit. But I still do enjoy those movies, like you said in this one, he really just remembers like very late that, oh yeah, I know karate. He throws like 5 kicks throughout the entire movie.
Yeah.
And the rest is just like him dual wielding Uzis and all that. And that's fine, I have no problem with that. I love shootouts as much as the next guy. I was like, yeah, it's like I miss when he was just he would incorporate that. Like he even does it more in the Delta Force. Where he has that, I mean, it's not really a fight scene, it's literally just him bullying Robert Forster with karate for 5 minutes at the end. But Chuck is Chuck in here. To go back to the original point, it's hard because I like his character. Even though like he's like almost like a non-character at points. I love when they come up to him and tell him that in his cabin in the swamps that Rostov is back, and like his emotion goes from serious to really serious. Like he just goes from like Stonewall to like really Stonewall. He just drops all emotion and it's like, oh that's the signification that he's mad. Oh yeah, he's really mad now because he's just like a little emotion to no emotion, and that's
that's Norris acting right there.
Yeah. Chuck is Chuck in the movie. No more, no less. But I dig him. I dig him. Like, I can't bring myself to hate Chuck, even though I like a lot of action stars better. I would definitely take Van Damme over him any day. I remember I did a Twitter prompt. This was a question that my father asked me. He asked me, 5 martial artists, and you have to lose one of their movies forever. And it was Bruce, it was Jackie, it was Sonny Chiba, it was Van Damme, and it was Chuck.
Yeah, I think I remember this.
Yeah, and I asked that, and it was almost like 90% Chuck. Like, a few people who said Sonny Chiba, which I'm no longer friends with those people. There was a few people who said Van Damme. It's like, I get it. But like almost everybody said Chuck, and they said it would have actually been a harder question if I would have left Chuck off the question.
Yeah,
because putting Chuck up there would have made it too easy a question to answer. So it's like, it's
I'll be honest. I think the reason why Chuck lost that is the same reason that people probably voted for Sonny next. Is Sonny Chiba isn't a name that people remember now in the same way that they remember Van Damme or Jackie or Bruce. However, I think Chuck's problem is the opposite. People know him, but I don't actually think they remember the impact he had with his films. Because unlike, say, Van Damme, if you say Van Damme to someone will go, Bloodsport, Kickboxer, and then you can rattle off all of these hits that he had, and you go, Chuck Norris. Oh, yeah, I remember him. What films was he in? It tends to be the reaction. People remember he was big in films, but they can't remember what films he was big with.
And then when you call into the question of like martial arts films, people don't really tend to remember, like, only like the diehard fans remember his martial arts films. Like when you think of Chuck, you think of Invasion USA, and you think of Missing in Action, and you think of the Delta Force, and he's just shooting them up, bang bang in those movies, nobody remembers The Force of One or The Octagon. I would say nobody, because obviously you and me remember The Force of One and The Octagon.
Yeah, I don't just remember him. I've got him on Blu-ray over there.
I know. See, y'all lucky over there, because just now they announced that their Kino Lorber is releasing The Octagon and Good Guys Wear Black, and I think A Force of One on Blu-ray. And it's like, finally, I can retire those old tired DVDs, and Scott's over here like, I got my Blu-ray over there.
We don't have all of them, but I do remember when Force of One came out, and it was the same time that Lone Wolf McCade came out, and it's so obvious which film got more love, because Force of One has this terrible artwork that I think was just like an old promotional poster. It's just like a shadow that kind of looks like Chuck in a yoga pose with a triangle around him, and then the front cover for Lone Wolf McCade is literally like the sort of artwork you see on a Eureka Entertainment DVD nowadays, or 88 Films, that's been painstakingly redrawn, It's like, I wonder which film is more popular.
Right. And to tell you the truth, to add to that, Lone Wolf McCade is the only film of Chuck's my dad likes. I think he likes it because of those Western influences that it has, and because my dad's a big Western fan. So I can see why that's the only film of Chuck's he likes. But and to him, all the Chuck's movies are dog shit.
I thought you were going to say because it has David Carradine in it.
My father's not a big fan. I'm not a big fan of David Carradine. Going back to the whole Kung Fu show. So I think he was probably happy to see David Carradine get his ass kicked.
When did you first see Invasion USA? Was it when it came out at the time in the cinemas, or did you watch it on home release later on?
Oh no, I was born in 1984, so when this came out, I was 1. I saw it on television when I was a kid. Like I said, WPIX used to show this a lot, so that's where I caught this for the first time. And I watched a lot of TV. I had 2 working parents, so when it wasn't often we went to the. I mean, we went quite a lot, but we weren't at the cinemas every week. So it was I did a lot of movie watching on television. Cable HBO. I saw a lot of stuff on there. But like I said, WPIX was the movie that really shaped me as a film fan because like all the stuff, the way that I am about certain movies and certain genres is all due to that channel and like the movies they showed. And like, yeah, they showed pretty much. I think that's where I saw a lot of Chuck's movies for the first time. Was Invasion USA, A Force of One, Delta Force, Firewalker, all the missing in action movies. But matter of fact, no, not all the missing in action movies. They showed 1 and 2 a lot, but I don't recall them ever showing 3, which is weird because I remember seeing 3 maybe like a decade ago, and or maybe even a couple of years before that, and that actually became my favorite of the missing in action movies. Is Missing in Action 3. So it's like, damn, y'all were holding out on me on that one because this movie's great. Like it's basically Chuck's Rambo 3, and I was like, it's and like it has like it. I mean, it has a serious plot, but it's not as serious as the first 2, especially part 2. So it's basically just Chuck. There's that one great section where Chuck just blows up an enemy compound and shoots everybody in it for like 5-10 minutes with that giant machine gun that's strapped to a giant grenade launcher. And yeah, that was great. But yeah, definitely I probably would have to have been 7, 8, 9 the first time I saw this on television. So yeah, that was my introduction to Invasion USA and Chuck. Was through that channel. So shout out to WPIX. They were great. I wish there was a channel that still showed the movies like they did, but fortunately, whatever. This is why I become such a dominant physical media collector, and now I've run out of room. So I have a lot of stuff in storage because I just don't have anywhere to put shit.
I am right with you there. Don't worry.
This is the issues of physical media collectors.
Yeah,
we like we get all this shit and then we ain't got nowhere to put them.
I'm really sorry, listeners, by the way, because we're going off the rails again a bit. But I saw a photo online the other day, and I thought when we eventually move into a house, it's got to have a basement, and I'm turning that basement into a giant Blu-ray and DVD collection, just racking that thing out with bookshelves and nothing else.
Absolutely. The same here.
But going to the film itself, I watched it, I think, around about the same age. But that was not my introduction to Chuck, because I was born in 91. So by the time I was old enough to start watching Chuck Norris stuff, Walker, Texas Ranger was already a huge, massive hit pretty much everywhere. I didn't actually watch it like that when it was on, but I did see the odd episode. And then later on, I saw it on reruns, and I've seen them all now. But at the time, I think I started with his martial arts stuff. But I also had to endure his more kid-friendly stuff. I distinctly remember that the first proper Chuck Norris film I can remember watching and knowing that this was Chuck Norris from Walker, Texas Ranger was actually Top Dog.
Top Dog. Oh, yeah.
Which as a kid, I really liked. Rewatching it as an adult, it was like, oh my God, never again.
And not to go on a tangent, but Top Dog is such a weird movie because it's supposed to be a family friendly movie, but it has him fighting neo-Nazis.
Yep.
Who will like do terrorist bombings, and it's like, holy shit.
That's because, and I'm going to say something really controversial here. I say we, I know you're slightly older than me, but when we were younger, we lived in a simple world. Nazis were the bad guys. End of discussion. You could kill them, and that was family friendly.
Right. No, yeah. It's talked about all the time how like Nazis were just like a lot of the really the easy go-to villains of like an action movie.
Yeah.
A lot of action movies are just like, oh, like who do we make the bad guys? Nazis. They're like, oh yeah, like everybody hates Nazi. You know what I'm saying? Punch a Nazi in the face. You know what I'm saying? Like, and it's just yeah. But it was like it's weird to see it in such a like something that's supposed to be a family friendly movie. It's about a guy and his partner who's a dog, and they're chasing down Nazis who blow up buildings. And it's just like, Jesus Christ, Chuck.
Another fun fact about this film is, of course, it was made by Canon Films, which has a glorious legacy all in of their own right. And I actually quite recently watched the Electric Boogaloo documentary.
Yeah, that's a great one.
It took me a bit of work to find it because it's not available on streaming services here. So I had to go out of my way to try and track it down. And it was funny because they actually mentioned this film specifically in a couple of others. And that was one of the reasons I was like, oh, yeah, I remember that. I'm going to do that as one of the episodes. And I'm going to do one of the others as well. So teaser for the future, Runaway Train is one of my next ones. But I found it really interesting watching this film, as I already said. But the plot of this film, I sent it to someone that I work with today because he'd never heard of the film. I mean, he's significantly younger than both of us. And he read the plot and he just typed back, "Holy fuck." And he was like, "That sounds amazing. How have I never heard of this?"
Yeah,
and it's like, yeah. I don't even know if there was ever a time when the plot of this film would have ever sounded anything other than insane. But actually seeing it executed is just so strange and so weird. So we are obviously going to talk spoilers in the show for the people listening, but this film came out in the 80s. I don't think you can really hold us to expecting us to not talk about spoilers. At the end of the day, we're going to talk about a film. So I want to talk about the spoilers. And admittedly, it's a Chuck Norris film. He kills them all. It's not hard to work this out. Anyway, with that out of the way, I don't know what's more controversial to talk about first. The fact that you had a terrorist attack happening on American soil before a terrorist attack actually happened on American soil, or the fact that there is a scene during said terrorist attack where they dress up as police officers and go and kill a bunch of people who may or may not be of a different ethnic origin to the local population, and use that as a way to incite riots from said population as an excuse to then join in and put them down with guns. And at that point, I was like, did someone from the future go back in time and make this film as a warning? Because I feel like they were picking up on something coming through those cosmic rays, man.
Oh yeah. This is why I said this is a movie that a couple of years ago I would have watched with reckless abandon, and now it's just like, oh, okay, yeah, this is kind of like, you know what I'm saying? It is weird, you know, and it's weird because it's like you have those points, and like you just stated, you know, you have terrorists dressing up as police officers who executing different ethnic groups. I'm pretty sure that they were supposed to be Cuban, even though one of the actors is actually Puerto Rican, because I remember him from Batteries Not Included in Leviathan.
Oh, that's right. He was in Batteries Not Included. Yes, thank you.
Yeah, he's actually Puerto Rican. If I remember correctly, he's Puerto Rican, like myself. But yeah, it's and it's weird because basically when this movie came out, it was almost like a right-wing fantasy. Really just like very Republican, you know, because obviously Chuck is a Republican. And he you know, and this was considered laughable, you know. Like, oh yeah, right-wing fantasy, you know, and stuff. And then it's just like, oh shit. Maybe they had a point. You know what I'm saying? Like, and you know, but it's like, but you know, it's considered laughable because, you know, it's just Chuck killing them all. Then you look at something like that had a similar plot, Red Dawn, that came out the year before, and that's going for a more realistic war on America, and like, you know, you have these children becoming guerrilla soldiers in America and having to fight back the Russians, and it's just like, and you think about it, and it's like, yeah, that because I remember having a discussion about Red Dawn on my buddy's podcast, Hit Rewind, my buddy Michael Cook, and we were talking about how like much of a right wing fantasy it is, and it's just like, yeah, like it's weird. Like you go for a movie that's clearly just seems so over the top, and then like you have those moments in there that feel a little too close to home, and just like, like why does fucking reality have to somewhat ruin movies from my childhood?
I don't think it ruined it. It was more, like you say, yes, there is that whole were they right, and it's like, no, I don't think they were that smart. That's a pure accident. No. I just think that whoever wrote it just thought of the most easiest ways to manipulate vast swaths of people. And unfortunately, later on, people actually just did it because they came to the same conclusion. I do find it interesting, though, watching the film, like you just said, it's unrealistic because Chuck basically becomes a one-man spirit of vengeance that just appears wherever there is trouble, no matter how far away it is, because that was a bit weird. But it really does feel like two different films were just smooshed together, because all the stuff that's from the terrorist point of view and feels like it came out of a different film that was trying to go for realism. Like, I love listening to them interact with each other, the planning, the fact that they broke off into cells, the fact that they're not communicating. It's like, this is very much how groups like this operate in a time when not everybody knew how groups like this operated. So clearly somebody knew what they were talking about or did their research. And then it feels like somebody took the script and went, this is an awesome way to set an action film. All we got to do is change it so that a one man comes in and wrecks their day, and we'll be golden. It's such a weird film. Like, all of the, there's a sequence in this film, folks, where people literally start shooting rocket launchers at your house and blowing people up in the middle of a housing estate. And I just was like, how is this film not talked about more, especially given what's happened over the past sort of 10 years in your wonderful home country? Because I will also stress, folks, even though it's pretty obvious, I'm not American. So I'm perhaps not the best qualified to talk about all of this stuff. But here's my opinion.
Scott, you're not American? I couldn't tell. Like...
I got... So on a personal level, I won't say what it was about, but I remember talking to a good friend of the podcast, previous guest Mike Scott, about something that happened in America, and I kind of brushed it off as like, I mean, I saw that on the news, and I get it, but at the same time, I don't get why it's such a big deal. And he just corrected me on that one, because again, I'm not in America. So for me, it's like it was on the news once and it's gone. For him, it's like still raw, still real. And it's so easy to forget that when you're not dealing with it day in and day out. I mean, for me, everybody really in the world right now can relate to what's going on with the pandemic. And that's a different film's discussion. But, I can completely believe that the people in this film would react the way they react to authority trying to crack down whilst they don't trust authority, because that's literally what has been going on for the last 2 goddamn years. So, although there are some aspects of this film that, again, as you said, might have been laughed at in the 80s, I've seen people charge the White House recently and try to take it over. And I've seen civilians with guns come out in defense of what they think is right and wrong. And I've seen people basically decline to do what they need to do purely because they have a personal problem with doing so. And all of these things are present in this film. And as you say, at the time would have been laughed off as that's not how people would react. It's not realistic. It's not this. It's not that. And now it's just like, God damn, that's kind of scary.
Yeah. It should be of note that the day we are recording this is the 1 year anniversary of the storming of the Capitol. And it's just, I could see Mike's point. That was an infuriating day. It's still infuriating. 1 year later, I saw a Facebook memory where I literally said, I have to get off the internet because I'm gonna punch a hole through the fucking wall because of how upset I was. Yeah, and it sucks because, like I said, this is such a right-wing fantasy. It's a right-wing idea, and it's just like I don't want to get into the satisfaction of thinking that they're right. Like they were right about everything because they're clearly fucking not. And
No.
a lot of this shit is of their doing. But yeah, it's just like, when you have a movie like this and you have an idea like that, and it's like, yeah, they really cartooned it up with this one. It's really like a comic book version.
Oh yeah,
like that sort of idea where it's just like I said, aforementioned Red Dawn, where it's almost like John Milius was trying to play matter of factly, like, yes, this will happen and this is how it's going to go down. It's just like, it's just, like, yeah, you have points and shit, but it's like, yeah, but a lot of this shit is your fault, motherfucker. Not John Milius, but like fucking, Republicans and, I don't want to put them all on blast because I actually know a few Republicans, but it's like, I'm talking about that just matter of way they think like, oh, they're coming for our guns and we have to protect ourselves and all that shit, and it's like, you wonder that a lot of them got the idea from this movie, and I want to say no. I just want to say like that was bred in them from
I don't think it came from this film. I 100% agree with you. It is a cultural thing that they grew up with, that is instilled at them at a very young age, which makes it nigh on impossible to break. And unfortunately, it gets passed on from generation to generation. I'm not just talking about this. I'm talking about all ideologies. Once one takes root in a large group of people, or even a small group of people, to be honest, you can't really easily make people change. And in this case, it is a very large group. So you got no hope, because yes, you might change a percentage of their minds, but then that just makes the other bigger percentages left dig their heels in harder. So good luck. Yeah. That's not even a subject I want to attempt to tackle on this particular podcast. But even if we were on a political podcast debating the facts of the world and coming to rights and making interesting statements about, quite frankly, ridiculous statements, I don't think we're the two people to do it.
Right. Yeah. I have a rule on Cinema Drunkies where I borrow no political talk at all, because it's just like, like, number one, I'm not the right person to talk about it, and number two, it's just such a fucking
minefield.
It's a minefield. It's rage-inducing discussion, and it's just like I want to have fun, talk about movies, and I don't feel like talking about bullshit I got to see on the fucking news and outside my window every goddamn day. So it's just like, this is why you got to give a little appreciation to this movie, because I felt like they had that idea, but they was like, let's just comic book it up, make it like just where it's like really just, I mean, they have this idea, but it's just like, when you look at the movie on the whole, it's just so goddamn unbelievable, that this one man is basically Superman. He knows where all the terrorist plots are happening, and he shows up and
that really got to me by the end of the film. It was like any terrorist does anything anywhere in America, Chuck Norris will be there, standing on a roof, squinting his eyes at you. It's time to die. And I was just like, how is he? What is he, psychic?
Right. Like, no, he just knows. He just knows. He just knows wherever this is happening, and he will be there. Except that one time at the carnival, where he wasn't there, and he's just like,
that scene totally confused me, because not only was Chuck not there, but we weren't there. Like, it just suddenly cuts to this disaster, and he's like, I wasn't here. And I'm like, wasn't where? I don't know what's going on.
Right. They probably added that in. It was like, dude, you're showing up everywhere. We have to put in one part where you don't show up and you're mad. And that makes you want to show up more places where the terrorists are at. It's like, okay, let's do that. Yeah, that seems right. You know?
The one thing I will say, though, is for all of the downright oddness of how he just knows when to show up, it is cathartic as hell when he does, and just Uno reverses all the things they're trying to do, with my personal favorite being the guys that are trying to bomb the church, and they can't figure out why the detonator won't go off, and he's just casually walks up behind them, chucks the briefcase down, and he's like, oh, it won't work, huh? Now it will.
Yeah.
That one, I just died laughing. I was like, I love the fact that they just stand there, all with machine guns, and they're like, we could shoot him, but he's talking, so we'll wait.
They could shoot him, or they could run away, but no, they just stand there. They just stand there and wait to get blown up. Like, it's bullshit.
But like you said, Chuck Norris is very much like Superman in this film. Whilst like I said, I stand by what I said earlier, and that I really enjoyed some of the gun sequences. There were other ones where he was just flat out Superman or Batman, depending on whether or not they wanted him to do that old ninja trope of being there 1 second and then disappearing into the crowd with a change of frame. And that made me chuckle so much, because normally when that's done, there's usually like some logical explanation, like lots of people move in front of the camera or something will distract people. In this, it was literally just, Chuck is here. The camera cuts away. Chuck is not here. Goodbye. Nah.
Right. And they don't have like him with a buddy who like is keeping tabs on them. Like, oh yeah, they're gonna be here, or they're gonna be there. Which you would see like in another movie. Like he would have like his any other action hero would have like a buddy who's like I don't know, like fucking on a computer, hacking the system, or he just have people on the underground who's giving him information so he can give to Chuck. No, Chuck just knows. Chuck just knows where everybody's at all the time.
Chuck just turns into an eagle, flies over to where he needs to be, and then turns back into a human.
Yeah,
that would make a good film. I think Chuck could enjoy that.
He did something like that, the Forest Warrior, where he turned into animals.
That was what I was referencing. This is actually an unofficial sequel. That's how he knew. He's the spirit of the forest.
Yeah, right.
I gotta say, I really enjoyed the performances of all the villains, as I previously said, but I gotta give a special shout out to Rostov, who just his getting angry voice was just spectacular. I mean, he threw some epic tantrums throughout this film. Like you say, it really helped to take you out of this is super serious, and then suddenly it was like, oh no, this is an 80s action film. This is totally over the top.
Right. Yeah, Richard Lynch is just an incredible presence on screen. And I like that. What I really like about this movie is that Rostov is clearly terrified of Chuck, Matt Hunter. He's clearly terrified. He has nightmares about Matt coming to kill him. When he was about to blow up some
embassy, wasn't it?
Yeah. And Chuck just shows up behind him. It's time to die, and he's just like frozen in fear. Like it's incredible that it might have played also into Chuck's ego, because Chuck did have an ego to him.
No.
That let's have the villain scared of me like throughout the entire movie. Like the reason, like, what's funny about it is that Chuck, the Matt Hunter, was just going to stay in his swamp cabin. He wasn't even going to get involved, and the only reason he got involved was because they attacked him because Rostov was fucking scared of him.
Yep.
And we got to kill him because I'm scared this guy's gonna come and get us and shit. But like you only pissed him off, and now he's coming to get you. So your whole plan failing was your own fucking fault because you
and
went
killed like
him.
one of his friends in the process. So that was it, man. Time to die.
And hurt his pet armadillo.
Yes.
You see the armadillo limping and falling over, like, my armadillo's hurt. Now I'm mad. And then he just goes off, like, he just changes his shirt, wears the same blue jeans, and just gets 2 Uzis and just kills every bad guy there is.
Yep, like good old denim on denim look.
Lady in tuxedo.
Yeah. It's funny actually, because the same complaint that we have made about Chuck just knowing where the bad guys are, I'm now going to make the same complaint about the bad guys always seemingly knowing where he is. Like, every time they were like, we're going to kill him. Okay, how are you going to find one man who could be anywhere in the country and probably isn't checking into hotels using his real name, given that he's supposed to be a Black Ops deniable agent? And yet the next scene is some group of their terrorist organization homing in on him like a pigeon. And I thought, so he can find them without any issues and they can find him without any issues. You just think, how is this not what? Just let them play out. The problem will resolve itself.
Right. Most definitely. They definitely didn't want to do too much thinking on this one. So they're like, they just end up and, they find him, he finds them, you know what I'm saying? Like, let's not get too carried away with like, logic or anything.
It's funny too, because, I think the film flat out tells you that as well. I absolutely love I wasn't sure if they were FBI or just supposed to be local police. I think they were supposed to be FBI, but they were those 3 investigation agents and, you had the 2 younger guys, and then you had the older guy who was like supposed to be the one in charge. And I absolutely loved when they were like, "We're not doing a very good job, are we?" And the old one was like, "Nope." And I just thought, that's just like a plea from the writers. It's like, don't think about this too hard. It's not my best work.
Right, absolutely.
And I thought they had some of the best dialogue in the film, which is good because there really weren't any other characters. I mean, they introduce, and this is how much of an impact she had on me because I cannot remember the character's name, but they introduced that photographer who was kind of supposed to be, I think, an independent journalist, but they never really make that clear. And she starts off and you think, oh, okay, so this is going to be the female sidekick, main character, that's going to latch onto him, follow him around and, do whatever it is she's going to do. No, that's not what happens at all. Like, she gets maybe 4 or 5 scenes in the film and then just disappears.
Right. And she's always mad. Like, every time you see her, she's always mad. She's pissed off at everybody. She's pissed off at Chuck. She's just pissed all the time. And it's just like, okay, she's the mad photographer. This is her character. This is all there is to her. There's nothing else to her, but she's a photographer who's mad.
It's a shame too, because the actress that played her, I really liked. And I thought she, like you say, she was always mad, which by the end was kind of, all right, this is kind of like played out now. But in the beginning, I was like, oh, I want to know more about her story. Like, she had some pretty good one-liners against the cops, against Chuck when he first showed up. And I love the fact that she just kept calling him Cowboy because she never really knew his name. And then all of a sudden she just knows his name, which is just brilliant. But yeah, they just do nothing with her. I mean, I know there are people out there that complain about underwritten female characters, but if you ever wanted a definition of one, I think this might be it.
Right. Yeah. Funny enough that Chuck actually wanted Whoopi Goldberg to play that part. And Cannon was just like, no. And I wonder why. Also, that would have been interesting to if they actually would have gotten Whoopi to play that part, because it would have been interesting to see how that part would have ended up in her hands.
Yeah.
Especially considering how funny Whoopi is. I'm saying that probably would have added a little bit more to the character other than just mad photographer lady. you know?
Yeah, I'd imagine they'd also expand the role and probably go down the route of actually making her some level of importance to the last stand, so to speak.
Yeah, yeah, most definitely. So yeah, that was they definitely just decided to have a lady in there. Just you know, I guess they felt like they needed to have a woman in there. You know, just because. But you did nothing with her, so what was the point actually? Because she literally does nothing but get pissed off, take pictures. So it's like whatever.
Yeah, and it's funny too because she has a knack for always being where the terrorists are about to attack.
Yeah,
I was. It really did feel like that Dr. Fate was sitting in the background going, you will all be together in the same place. Because, like you say, everybody could find each other so easily. And then you just throw her in the mix and you think, all right, there's coincidence. And then there's someone is pulling the strings, my friend.
right. Most definitely. Most definitely.
So I think we're both in agreement that the story is ridiculous and over the top, but has some scary overtones. But
Mm-hmm.
what did you think about the actual action of the film itself? I personally really liked it, and I'll go more into it in a minute, but I'm really curious to hear your thoughts.
I like the action a lot in it. You know, in considering the this came out in the era of big dumb sweaty beefcake with machine guns. And I like a lot of it, like you said, he's not just a guy shooting a big machine gun like Schwarzenegger and Stallone. He's sitting there, like he's got movement to him, he's moving around. Um I guess, obviously, that has to do to his martial arts, he has to have movement in there. It's not like Braddock or anything where he's just, being the big sweaty guy with a machine gun.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really like that mall sequence where he comes in with his truck and he's just gunning everybody down. That's probably my favorite sequence in the movie. Yeah, like the lot of the climax too, like it's weird too because in the climax the it seems like the more epic battle is because Chuck is inside a building and he's killing terrorists inside the building. And that's fine, but like the more epic stuff is taking place outside the building where the National Guard
Yeah.
are going against the terrorists, and it's like you would think that would probably be the centerpiece, and like you would want to pay more attention to that. But no, like we're really more focused on Chuck just killing these guys in the office cubicles and stuff. And there's not as much urgency to it as it was the stuff that's going on outside, but like it's fine. It's not like a big problem for me. But other than that, yeah, I really enjoy the action. I like that sequence where the chase where they put the terrorists put the bomb on the school bus.
Oh yeah.
And he has to race to get to the school bus to take the bomb off to give it back to the bad guys, so they can blow up. Yeah, even though that bomb should have exploded a long time ago by the time he actually caught it and then gave it back to them. It was like 2 minutes, and it took like 5 minutes for that whole sequence to take place.
Yep.
And but it's a fine, exciting sequence, even though it has no logic to it. But
you're watching a Chuck Norris film. Logic does not apply here.
Yeah, I shouldn't be complaining about logic in a Chuck Norris movie at all. But yeah, I really also like because I'm a big fan of explosions, and this movie's explosion heavy, so it's like that's the stuff that gets me. I like seeing shit get blown up real good, and definitely a lot of shit that definitely gets blown up real good in this movie. So like I really enjoy the action in this movie a lot.
Yeah, no, I agree. I really do like the explosions in this film. It kind of reminded me that once upon a time we used to blow stuff up for real and not hire a special effects company to blow up pretend stuff. But the one thing I'll go in order because I have some thoughts about the very end sequence. But I really like the mall sequence as well. I think that's the highlight of the film for me. It does suffer a little bit, as I said, from 20 people can't hit the side of a truck. even though they're like literally 10 feet in front of him. But I get that, that if you're watching a film that was made in the 80s, they're never going to be able to. That was just how action films were done back then. That's fine. I actually really liked I think it was before the mall. Yes, it was before the mall. It was the scene where he got the information out of one of Rostov's men, and he has the knife in his hand, and he's interrogating him whilst also telling the bouncers not to get involved. And that whole sequence was kind of like, I like this character. He's got a bit of questionable morality, in inverted commas, and it was kind of hinting at the fact that he has some physical skills as well as being good with guns. Yes, he doesn't show it off for a bit, but that's the closest you get to some hand-to-hand combat before the final fight. Then you have the mall sequence. Then lots of crazy stuff happens in between where you get little snippets. And as I say, that's when he shows off he's good with the Uzis. Everybody goes down. Really, I think every single character in the film goes down with one shot from Norris. I don't think there's a single character other than Rostov himself that actually takes some work to go down. Then you get to the climax. I really liked the scenes with Chuck going through the office building. I think they could have been better. I think if they'd actually had some of the guys actually give Chuck a threat or a challenge, that would have been nice. And it also would have been nice if he could have alternated more between doing hand-to-hand CQC and using his Uzis. But again, I don't know if that's an unfair expectation because no one was really doing that back then. You didn't really get a lot of films that could blend those together. That's a very modern thing, but it's such a shame because Chuck could have done it. Like, he was never going to win an Oscar, guys, but action films he could do. And it just felt like such a wasted sequence. The National Guard, on the other hand, I did enjoy it. Like you said, it was a big spectacle. It made stuff blow up, but my God, did it frustrate the hell out of me that scene even exists, because there were about 300 National Guard, about 25 tanks, 3 helicopters, and God knows how much else, all pointed at this group of people who had no cover, were surrounded on all sides, and the National Guard fired first. If I was to re-edit that sequence, it would be, the National Guard fire, they all die.
Yeah. I give you that.
They tried to make it like, oh no, some of them jumped off and some of them did this. No, you didn't do the geography of that scene very well at all. There is no hint of there being any cover. There's no hint of anybody being behind barricades. They are all out in the wide open, and it just makes no sense that any of them survived the initial assault from the guard. And then, even when they do, they have tanks. The other side does not have tanks, and the tanks fire. So it's like, and then they bring in the helicopters, and I'm going, what are these guys wearing as body armor, man? Because they need to give it to the soldiers of the military of today, because they're just so like invincible.
Right. Yeah, most definitely. But you have to draw it out, you know what I'm saying? Because you got to make it look like they're doing something. They're like, make a spectacle of it, So it's like, the terrorists don't go down in like 5 seconds as they should have,
Yeah.
We got to make a spectacle of it, Of course, Canon. We spend all this money, do something, like we can't just have them getting killed, like in 2 seconds. I'm trying to do my best Menachem Golan impression. Do something. I spent all this money, like, so I can see that, but like, realistically, they should have died in seconds.
Yeah. I think, to be honest, they could have had that final sequence if they just took out the scene of the National Guard rocking up beforehand. If they'd come out the building and the National Guard was coming down the street, and then both sides had time to prepare, that would have made more sense. But it's the fact that they walk out into a trap, and yet somehow it's like watching a video game where characters just glitch into position. It's like all the terrorists just suddenly go, and they've moved without being seen.
Right. Yeah. Definitely.
But other than that, like I said, I enjoyed the sequence overall. I was surprised at how much I enjoyed the action in the film. Because it was made in the 80s, because it was Chuck in his gun era, I was really expecting it to just be over the top spectacle. And as I've just described, there is plenty of over the top spectacle, but it also kind of knew when to go up close and personal and just give us 4 or 5 guys for Chuck to kill real quick and establish that you don't want to mess with him. And I think it does a really good job of that. And then it makes you realize why Rustev is so afraid of him. I do wish that we could have actually gotten some backstory as to why he's so afraid of him, like what it was that happened beforehand. Because if that was explained, I totally missed it. But I don't think it was. And
he mentions it earlier when he said he had the chance to kill Rostov, and they didn't let him. They didn't give him the okay or something to kill Rostov, and so that's why.
See. When I heard that, I was waiting for the moment where it would be revealed that that's because he was a deniable CIA asset, and that it turned out he was being funded by the Americans, because that's usually what is the case if you're not allowed to kill in a film like this. It's because they were actually working for the CIA, but then they just didn't do anything with that. I don't know if maybe that was the part of the original story, but it just got cut because, it wasn't big explosions, so why bother or something. But I feel like that would have helped, at least me.
Right, most definitely. Yeah, like it's in a movie, probably if this were made nowadays, that probably would have been the case. You would have had he was being funded by the Americans. Kind of like Long Kiss Goodnight. Where you find like the Americans are funding terrorist operations in order to get funding from the government. You know what I'm saying? It would have been something like definitely would have been something like that. But like you said, I don't think the screenwriter, not to call him an idiot, but he wasn't. I was to say he wasn't thinking about that. Let's just make a big strong guy killing terrorists on American soil, like trying to take over America, so we're gonna have this American who's the most American come in with his guns and kill all the bad guys who try to take over America. That kind of thing. That was their only point.
Yeah, I mean, without being mean, canon films were not exactly known for their amazing developed story and characters. They had a brand, they had something to live up to, and they did for the most part up until all their problems. And I mean, like I said, it's a really enjoyable film. Like you say, right-wing fantasy, maybe, but I still enjoy it. It's just one of those things at the end of the day. I really, really liked what Liam O'Donnell said over on the Action for Everyone podcast, that at the end of the day, if you're watching an action film, you kind of have to just accept the fact that it's going to be a little bit authoritarian by its very nature. So I agree with you.
Yeah.
I very rarely let any thought of politics come in, but I like to point it out when a film like this is so overtly going to draw those comparisons in these days, even though it wasn't when it was made. This wasn't the film's intention. It's just now what it has to deal with as part of its baggage. The very final fight, for those of you who don't quite remember it, maybe it's been a few years, it isn't a hand-to-hand fisticuffs. It starts off as one, and like Rob said earlier, there isn't really a proper hand-to-hand fight sequence, so Chuck just basically kicks him and then does his ninja disappearing trick, and then it turns into a battle of rocket launchers, which was just the funniest thing I think I've ever seen, because I don't think I've ever seen someone fire a rocket launcher underarm before. And that's how Chuck chooses to kill our titular villain, by essentially just slinging a rocket at him, beating him to the draw of who can get their rocket off first, and then blowing up one of the weirdest looking prosthetics for a human I've ever seen.
Right. And then Charles Bronson did it either before or right after, and in Death Wish 3, when he blew up Fraker at the end. But his rocket launcher had a trigger on it.
Yeah.
Like a grip and a trigger on it. So it wasn't the same at all.
Yeah, no. His made sense. Is what you're trying to say there.
I think I mean they weren't. like I said, I'm not trying to be mean, but I don't think they were smart enough to realize that they could have incorporated a lot of more hand-to-hand stuff in there. Like you look at the John Wick movies where they're like, the gunfights and the fisticuffs are one and the same, almost in the same sequence. You think of the red circle sequence from the original John Wick, and you think that's if this movie were made now, that's probably how like the cubicle sequence would have went.
Yes.
Where he's killing them with guns, and then he turns around and fucking them up real bad with his martial arts and all that stuff, and he interchanges. He goes back and forth. Back then it was the era of the gun. You know what I'm saying? Like you had to be shooting guns, and you had to shoot a lot of bullets, and
era of the gun, but not the gun fu.
Yeah. It's a shame that Chuck got drawn into that, because he was a great martial artist, and it would have been nice to have seen him continue to incorporate martial arts into it. But he was trying to keep up with the Stallones and the Schwarzeneggers, like I said.
Yeah, and I mean ultimately that's where the money was, right?
Yes, yeah. Especially with Stallone, because by 1985 Stallone was the biggest movie star in the world, because you had Rambo First Blood Part 2 and Rocky 4 both come out that year, and they both made over 300 million, which adjusted for inflation would be over 600 million, which basically means he had two movies that made accumulated gross of $1.2 billion. So of course, everybody's like, oh, look at Stallone, he's making all the money over there. We got to do what he's doing, That's why I always appreciated Schwarzenegger, because you look at Commando, because we said this movie is very politically inclined, right-wing fantasy, and a lot of Stallone's movies are, even though he denies it. Obviously, with First Blood Part 2 is a very political movie. Even Rocky 4 is a very political movie. I love that Schwarzenegger just really left that shit out. He was there to make a movie. He wasn't, even though it's weird because he's the one who became a politician.
Yes.
You really you see his movies are kind of bereft of politics.
Yes.
Commando, they're fake bad guys from a fake country, and he just kills them, and there's nothing political about it. It's very tongue in cheek stuff. The only thing closest that came to politics in the Schwarzenegger movie are Red Heat. Where he plays the Russian guy. I love Red Heat. He's teaming up. I love Red Heat too, and I was like. And at the end, this is the closest he comes to politics in it, because in the end, he goes to Ritzik, Jim Belushi, and he goes, "We're policemen, not politicians."
Yeah.
And that's the closest his movies come to politics, to show that we're not politicians. He's basically saying we're here to entertain motherfuckers. We're not here to fucking solve world crisis and government issues with a movie here. We're just here to entertain, and let it just be that. So that's why I always appreciated Schwarzenegger. Just to point that out.
No, go for it. I mean, I'm going to continue this off-topic discussion, because I've made it no secret. When other people were talking about their favorite action hero, for a lot of people today, it seems to come down to Van Damme or Stallone. And Schwarzenegger is always in those conversations, of course. And yes, if we're going international, that muddies the water. But I'm talking about just the ones that are thought of as American, which is hilarious because, Schwarzenegger and Van Damme aren't. But right. For me, it was always Schwarzenegger. I grew up watching Schwarzenegger films. I will always prefer to watch a Schwarzenegger film to a Stallone film. That has kind of changed as I've gotten older. But I detest the people that will be like, oh, well, Schwarzenegger can't act. And it's like, he can act. He made a couple of bad films. And yeah, in his really early work, he wasn't an actor. It's like he literally just went from being somebody that owned property to trying to be in films with no real training in between. And you're going, well, he was a bad actor. And it's like, yeah, no shit. But look what he did in less than 5 years. He completely flipped that on its head. Yeah. I just think he always knew how to make films that entertained. And in my opinion, it's what action does best. Which might be weird when I say this, given that we spent a long portion of this podcast talking about the realities. But I think action films have always been able to bring people together and unify because of the fact that they aren't something that really requires much debate, in inverted commas, because it's just about being entertaining. There are action films that can and do make themselves politicized, but that's usually because the story is trying to go in that direction and it just happens to have action scenes. You very rarely find pure 100% action films that are sat there going, how can we change the world, guys? Because they understand what the assignment is, to use a phrase that all the kids love.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And Schwarzenegger always understood the assignment.
I don't know if you've read it, but I have his autobiography.
I read it.
Yeah. So the thing that, obviously he's not a perfect person. I'm going to say that right now. Like anyone who's saying, but what about X, Y, and Z? Yeah, he's got his problems. And he's fully happy to admit that he has his problems. But the thing that sells him, for me, that makes him different to 99% of other people is, yes, he too is a Republican. And as we said, Chuck is a Republican. But unlike most people that are interested in politics, most politicians, he doesn't care. He doesn't care what he is. He doesn't care what you are. Are you the person that can get the job done? Yes or no? And are you going to do the right thing? Yes. Okay, then let's work together. And I think that's the same approach that helped him make the films he made, because every film he's ever made feels like he made it better. Yeah, maybe not with his acting ability, maybe not originally with his presence, but like Predator, for example, it wouldn't be the film it is if he didn't have the contacts that he made making Terminator, because he basically brought in the people from Terminator to help him salvage the film when it fell apart. Right. And there's so many stories like that. And we're really off topic now, but I don't care.
No, it's fine. It's fine. I want to add to that Predator thing before we move on. That movie is probably as good as it is because of Schwarzenegger. Also, credit to John McTiernan, because John McTiernan is a master. Yeah. And I miss John McTiernan movies. But like I always say that when it comes to the mano between him and the Predator, I always like the fact that Schwarzenegger gets the shit beat out of him throughout the final fight, because he's fighting in like a 10-foot tall alien from outer space. Yeah. He doesn't stand a chance in beating him in a one-on-one fight. If that movie would have been made by starred anybody else, like for instance Stallone, it really would have been a knockdown, drag out brawl, because Stallone is going to refuse to get the shit beat out of him on screen like that. He's gonna win fair and square and all that. Schwarzenegger was smart enough to be like, no, this is an alien. He's stronger than me. He's bigger than me. He's going to kick the living shit out of me, and that's okay, you know. And that's the beauty of him, because he also, he never took himself that seriously. You know, he wasn't above poking fun at himself, obviously, with like Last Action Hero.
Another film I love.
I love Last Action Hero. That's definitely on the lineup to do soon, because I love that movie. But yeah, like, you got to appreciate a guy like that who's just like, it makes sense. It's logical. He's going to kick the shit out of me, and fine, let's do it, Yeah. And that's why Schwarzenegger will always be one of the top guys. My honestly, if we're going favorite action heroes, mine is Van Damme. But
which is fair.
Yeah, Schwarzenegger's right up there. I love the guy. But let's get back to talking Chuck.
I think we have pretty much wrapped up our thoughts. But there was a clever way I was about to signal all that back, because Schwarzenegger. I'm sorry. No, it's fine. It doesn't matter. It's not ruined. But because the point I was going to make, and then you nicely set it up, is we were just talking about Schwarzenegger, and as you said, he was willing to let himself get beat up if it served the story and it made sense from a character point of view. And Chuck Norris definitely wasn't a lot of the time. I think there are a couple of films where he does at least have a challenge, but 9 times out of 10, like this one, for example, there's no challenge whatsoever. Like we said, he just comes in, people die, he moves on, next group. And the thing that made me laugh is, as I was watching it and realized that was the rhythm that we were going to have, a little voice in the back of my brain went, this film came out in 1985. Do you think this is the film that Steven Seagal watched and went, I could make a career doing this?
Yes. Yes. Absolutely.
Because this feels like it's a Steven Seagal film, but 5 years before that was the thing.
Right. Like this feels definitely feels like a predecessor to something like On Deadly Ground.
Yep.
That's the movie where it's just like that motherfucker's ego is ginormous. It's like every time Seagal walks on screen, everybody's like, hey, he's here! Like, we're saved! You have the great Arlie Ermy delivering like a 5-minute soliloquy about how badass Steven Seagal is. He's the kind of guy who do this, that, and the third, you know what I'm saying? And like, yeah, like he's the greatest motherfucker since Jesus Christ. And then now let's go find him and kill him. Like, yeah, thanks for the confidence booster with that little fucking speech you gave about how this guy's gonna kill us all. Yeah, I really appreciate it. You know, and it's like, yeah, Seagal is definitely he was like the new age chump because it was like I want to say it was Marked for Death was like the only time you ever see like Steven Seagal have like a challenge where he was fighting the last bad guy, because Screwface definitely fucking gets some licks on him. I remember there's one person he slammed him against the wall, and you never see that in any other Seagal movie ever. He just comes in, he bitch slaps everybody with his tambourine hands.
Yep.
And then that's it.
Tambourine hands.
Right. Like the end of Out for Justice. I love Out for Justice, but the final confrontation is just him bitch slapping William Forsythe for 5 minutes.
Yep.
Like William Forsythe doesn't get a lick, like the scratching. Nope, he's just throwing him.
That's every Steven Seagal film. I mean, I had a friend I used to work with, and I mentioned Seagal once, and he said, "Oh yeah, I've probably seen that film." And oh really? I went, "No, but I can guess how it ends. He launches some birds off of his arms, and then it just cuts, and everybody's on the floor."
Yeah. Steven Seagal is the kind of guy where it's like you mention one of his movies, and it's like, oh, is that like you go Out for Death? Oh, is that the one with the Jamaican bad guys? No, that's Marked for Death. Oh, is that the one with the senator who killed his family and wants revenge? No, that's Hard to Kill. It's like all his movies blend in together.
Yeah.
Like I think the only one that stands out is Under Siege because that's the Die Hard one. You know.
Yeah.
So everything else is just like, is all one and the same. It's almost like the same fucking movie.
Yep. Especially if you include the tripe that he put out pretty much all through the 2000s and 2010s to today. I mean, that's like watching the same film over and over again with ever decreasing performances. I just can't get over how little he does in his films. I mean, someone else does his voice. It's not him doing the fights. Half the time, it's not even him walking from one point on the scene to another. I'm just like, what happened, man? How are you still paid to do this?
Yeah. It's actually that's like my favorite, my second favorite section of Seagal's filmography, because it's just how fucking funny it all is. Like from 2003 to like 2007, when he was making those direct-to-video features, like Submerged and Out of Reach and Out for a Kill, and it's just like, you can play a drinking game with those movies. Like take a drink every time it's not his real voice. Every time you see his stand-in, you'll be fucking destroyed by the end of it. But like it'll be fun. Like it's just what happened to you, man? Like that man stopped giving a shit. And I mean, hey, if they still pay you to be in those movies, all power to you and shit. But I ain't gonna be watching them.
No, what I will say is, like, as much as we both agree that Chuck Norris going to the gun age was a sad day for martial art fans, at least Walker Texas Ranger brought him back to martial arts, even if it was a TV show. And Chuck, for all of his faults, he could always put together an entertaining fight scene. Like, he could do the work. Steven Seagal had one go-to move, that was to flail his hands wildly and hope that everybody else died. And you can't, as much as I might be making a joke, guys, that, this feels like a Seagal film, I would much rather watch all of Chuck Norris's films than ever have to sit through Seagal films again.
Right. No, yeah, definitely. Even like Chuck's last starring vehicle, The Cutter, like he's still like making an effort. He's still trying to do, put together the best possible project he can, even at his age. And Seagal has just stopped giving a shit a long time ago. And I doubt he ever will again. There was one point where, it seemed like he was gonna make it come back to doing proper movies. What was that? Urban Justice and Pistol Whip. I like those. Those were the best.
I think around the same time he made one called The Keeper, and I really liked that one because
the Keeper's good.
Yeah, it like you say, it felt like he was going to have a comeback, and it's funny because I'm pretty confident, if I'm remembering my release dates correctly, that's the exact same time that JCVD had his comeback. Because JCVD came out in 2008, and I feel like that's what motivated him to try and actually, put in some work. And I just think the difference is JCVD kept putting in the work. Eventually, he did have some hiccups and managed to come back. And Steven just went, "Oh, this is too much work," and just went back to what he was doing before.
Right. Yeah. JCVD, he when it comes to him, he realized. I think he realized that I'm getting up there in age. I'm full of injuries. I remember the discussion Mike had with Scott Atkins when they were talking on the Atkins on the
Oh yeah, when they're talking about the Shepherd.
Yeah, and he was like, he was kind of disappointed that Van Damme didn't want to be like a lot more physical, and that he said now I'm a lot older and I can understand that because I've got injuries and all that stuff and I can't keep doing the same stuff like I used to, like when I was younger and full of vigor and energy, and now he gets it. And like Van Damme I believe he realized that, and I was like, let me concentrate on something else, because I always felt Van Damme was a good actor. He not every performance of his is fantastic, but like he was always I'll quote Dean Devlin when he was talking about him on when they were doing special features for Universal Soldier, where he was like that Van Damme was emotionally available to them at all times when it came to like getting like doing an emotional moment in the script, and like he liked that about him, that he was always emotionally available. So like, but I feel like he's been like that his whole career. We talked about it a bit on a discussion about Lionheart on Cinema Drunkies, formerly known as the Action Drunkies. But yeah, like I guess he came to it came to a head where he was like, let me try something else. I'll do an occasional action movie here and there, but let me focus on my acting, and it's worked out for the best for him, because he's really turned in some just truly great performances over the years from JCVD. I really loved him in Enemies Closer, where he played the villain in that.
Anytime he plays a villain, I think he's in his element.
Right. Because like what I love about him, he always has those he always makes those choices where it's just like like in Enemies Closer, where he's walking through the forest and he sees like a strawberry, and he goes like, "I didn't know you grew in this part of the forest." And he's like, that's such a Van Damme choice, You could tell he was like, "Oh, I want to try something here." He went to the director, and the director was like, "Okay."
And of course, you got Mike's favorite line, "I like Symbol."
Yeah. So I mean, like that's why, Van Damme, he will always be my favorite. Because like the man has really reinvented himself, for a new generation, and he will always be tops for me. He's been my hero since I was a kid, and I love the guy. I love Van Damme on this conversation
And thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for joining us on our chat on Getting to Know Us with Scott and Rob. Be sure to tune in tomorrow. But no, I think that's a good point as any to wrap it up for here. So thank you very much to Rob for joining me. I hope you had fun. Oh, absolutely. This is our second chat, and this great one as the last one was. Always have a great time talking to you, however, whether it's like this or like you text, because me and Scott text each other often. And it's always a joy talking to you, man. And love to chat with you many more times, whether it's on my show or yours. Whenever you want to chat, just hit me up and I'm there. That sounds good, because now that you're breaking out and doing more generalized cinema, I know you're going to need your action fixed. So don't worry. You can come here anytime and get right into the nitty gritty weeds. And maybe next time we'll pick a film that there's more to talk about that doesn't require us to go fishing in every other action star.
Right. I mean, like we're still gonna talk action movies here and there, but like, yeah, like it's gonna be more like all-rounded cinema.
Yeah,
we're talking about.
You know what I mean.
No, yeah, definitely. Like, you know, when it comes to the nitty-gritty on action, I know the place to come.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, that is the end of today's episode. Thank you very much to Rob for joining me. Now, before we go, the bit of trivia that I was talking about in the intro is this. Well, actually, there's two pieces of trivia. One is that during the episode, we were talking about some of the sequences. One of the ones that I mentioned is the sequence in which a housing estate gets blown up by the terrorists, and it turns out that was pretty much real. The entire crew of the film were allowed to blow up a real residential neighborhood during shooting because it was slated for demolition due to the expansion of Hartsfield Airport's runway. So, the Atlanta Film Commission gave the Cannon Group permission to blow it up. So, yeah, that sequence was literally actually real, which is probably why it looks so damn good all these years later. The other thing that I was just like, what? So, in this conversation, we make a pretty big, point about the fact that it just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. I make issue about the fact that a lot of stuff is kind of referenced and mentioned and doesn't really add up. Like, you know, they always know where each other are. They don't reveal what happened between them before now. Like, they've clearly got history. Chuck was a CIA agent, but a lot of that doesn't really get addressed. Well, according to IMDb's trivia page, and I'm stressing that that's what I'm reading this from, so I assume this is correct, but, you know, just in case it isn't, this is where I've taken it from. Cannon completely removed all of the story elements and background characters in the editing room in order to concentrate on Chuck Norris and the action. Editor Daniel Lowenthal has stated that Cannon's cut made the film heavily episodic and pretty much just a collection of explosive action scenes. And I'm not gonna lie, that makes so much goddamn sense. Because we made several comments about the fact that a lot of the characters just kind of appear and disappear with no real explanation. Anyone that isn't Chuck doesn't really get any kind of character end of sentence. There's just nothing there. And the fact that it sounds like there was, but it was all edited out, it just, oh my god, does that infuriate me? Because I think there could have been a really interesting film here. This bit pretty much confirms what I say, which is that there are two different films here. There's the film that was written, there was the film that they wanted to make, and then there's the finished product. But I didn't know that. I was thinking it was influence from the studios when they were filming it. But no, it's more insidious than that. They let them, you know, shoot what they wanted to shoot, but then they just edited it together to be what they wanted, which was a big explosive filled action fest. And, you know, in fairness, it made a lot of money, and like I said earlier, it did really well. So I guess it was probably the right move for the time, but if only we could get, Invasion USA Snyder Cut, no. But you know what I mean, it's like, it would be cool to see the original intention of the film, to see all of the background characters, all of the different story elements that were essentially, you know, left on the cutting room floor. And, that's just really, both made me happy in the fact that I wasn't going mad, that I was essentially right, but also really depressed me because, yeah, I would love to have seen the original version of this film. The other thing is that Chuck Norris performed most of his own stunts, including the scene where he hangs off the side of the pickup while he's driving through the shopping center. And I gotta be honest, when I watched the film, I actually made a conscious thought, and I cannot remember if I said it in the conversation, so I'm saying it now, that the doubling was on point. You know what I mean? It was really difficult to tell when the Chuck's brother or his double, because, you know, his brother used to double him a lot, but it was really difficult to tell when it was Chuck and when it wasn't Chuck in quite a number of the scenes, and that was one of the ones that I was really like, oh man, this is really good. Yeah, there's a reason for that, because he did it himself. So, there you go. There's some bits of trivia. So, I know what you're all wondering. What is going to be next? And I'll be honest, I had a plan when I made this podcast. I have a bunch of episodes all laid out, and I almost decided to deviate from them, but I've decided that we're going to stick to the original plan. So, the next episode is going to be Hydra. And for those of you who are thinking of Marvel, no, not that group. Hydra is a Japanese film, and it was one of the ones that Action Twitter was very, very excited for. I know a lot of action fans were really, really curious about it. It's advertised as this big martial arts extravaganza, and I know so many people were clamoring for this one, and I had to bring back Mike Scott to talk about it with me. So if you enjoyed our chat on Spider-Man, don't worry, you don't have to wait very long to hear us go at it again, because he's going to be back next week, and we're going to talk about Hydra. We're going to talk about independent filmmaking, and we're going to go a little bit off topic, because that's pretty much what I do in every episode, just as a heads up. And so, yeah, next week's episode's going to be on Hydra. But with that said, that's next week's episode. Thank you very much again to my guest host, Rob, for coming on and co-hosting with me this week. It was an absolute pleasure to talk to you. Like I said before, go and check him out. He is a great guy. You will love following him. He posts so much about films, and he's just, as you heard, really nice personality. So with that said, that's it for today's episode. We will see you next week for the next one. Thank you for getting with me into the action on the Action Addicts podcast, and I will see you next time.
On the Action